How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. We are in for the usual 1-2 game $500 here at Poker House Dallas. Unfortunately, Poker House is now closed, but we still have a few vlogs to post, and they are some good ones, so let's jump right into this one. We're going to start this one off with a little Jack 5 of hearts. There's a $5 button straddle, and there's one limp. I'm not sure what I was thinking at the time, but I was looking to get a little frisky, get in the mix early in the session, start throwing some punches. So I raised it up to $20 from the hijack, and the cutoff and the limper both put in the call. The limper decides to check dark before he sees the flop of ace-3 deuce with one heart. We flop a gutter ball with a backdoor flush draw. When the limper checks dark, the action gets to me, and I was the original raiser here on this ace-high board. We're going to have a lot of the strong hands on this board, such as ace-king, ace-queen, pocket aces, even pocket threes, and deuces. So I'm going to act like I have one of those hands, and I'm going to bet out here for $20. But unfortunately, this does not do anything for us because both players put in the call. So we're going to have to battle here to a turn card, which is the king of diamonds. Doesn't help our hand in the slightest. We are now just sitting with jack high and a gutter ball to the straight. Any four would give us that straight. But when the early position player checks to me, we have a decision to make. Do we want to keep bluffing here? This king is going to be good for us. Like I mentioned, we have ace-king, pocket aces, and now pocket kings has trips, which we are basically the only one in the hand who could have that. So when the early position player checks, we're sitting with jack high. What do you expect me to do? I throw out a bet of $110, and it's a pretty big bet compared to the size of the pot. We are putting on max pressure both for our opponents. I don't usually like to bluff multi-way, but this seems like a spot where it's going to get the job done quite frequently. But to my surprise, the cutoff player basically just snap calls my bet, doesn't even think about it. He just puts in the chips. It's pretty surprising. We might have to blast off this river here depending on what it brings. And we are definitely going to blast off when it comes to 4 of clubs. Somehow, some way, we find ourselves with the wheel. We have a straight, and there's only one move for me to do. I have $330 left in my stack. I was probably going to rip it in anyway if I didn't hit my draw. That's pretty easy to say after the fact, but we do. We go all in for $330, and he goes into the tank here. Seems like he has a pretty tough decision. I can't believe we're sitting with the straight, but in the end, he decides to flick in the call. Oh, man, we show him that we rivered the straight, and he shows us the ace-4 of diamonds. So we had 3 outs in the river, and we got there. He had 2 pair with a flush draw on the turn. Kind of a cooler there. What a dirty river. And we're going to be scooping in that over $1,100 pot to start the session. And I guess we got a little bit out of line pre-flop, and it paid off. Unfortunately, we had to leave this session, so we booked a win of $760. Promise it wasn't really a hit and run. I played for a little while, but there weren't really many interesting hands to go over. But we came back later that day, and we hopped back into the 1-2 game in for $500. Let me tell you, this one is a doozy. Hopping right into the first hand of this session, we look down at the ladies. Pocket queens. We're in the low jack. There's $5 on the button, so I started off by raising to $20. And no surprise, we get 4 callers, going 5 ways to a flop, hoping for a good one. And I guess we kind of get it. I'm not sure. It's 10-9-4 with 2 clubs. It's a little bit connected. There's a flush draw. And we don't hold the queen of clubs, but when the action checks to me, and there's 4 other players in the hand, I'm sitting with pocket queens. I have a very vulnerable hand. Any board connecting or club or overcard kind of turn is going to decrease the value of our hand. So I put out a bet of $60, and we do thin the field a little bit here because we only get called by the hijack and the big blind. The turn card is the 5 of spades. It's really good for us. It doesn't really improve any 2 pairs that are going to be likely, and it definitely doesn't bring any straights on board. So when the action checks to me once again, I decide to throw a bigger bet this time of $155. We're going to have the best hand a lot of the time, especially when we don't get check raised on the flop. The 5 shouldn't change anything, so if we had the best hand on the flop, we should still have the best hand on the turn. The hijack gets out of the way, but the big blind, not so fast. He gets a little sticky, puts in the call, and we're going to be going off to a river card. The river is the 8 of hearts. This card definitely connects the board a little bit. Queen Jack now makes a straight as well as 6-7 and Jack 7. But when he calls my bet on the turn, I think it's going to be really unlikely that he has a straight on the river unless he has Queen Jack of clubs. But I think he might check raise that on the flop sometimes. So any other straight doesn't really make too much sense to me. That being said, it definitely connects the board and makes a few 2 pairs like 9-8 and 10-8. Again, those don't make too much sense, but nothing really makes much sense here in Texas playing poker. So I go with my gut. When he checks, I decide to just take a showdown. And sure enough, he has the winner with 10-8 of spades. He rivered, 2 pair, and he cracked our queens. What are you going to do? We tried to get him out of there, but he got sticky with top pair. We're going to move on to the next hand. We are on the button with Queen Jack offsuit, and there's 3 limps over to me. You know we're pumping more money in the middle here. I make it $25 to go, and we're going to get 3 callers. So multi-way in position to a flop, which is 9-5-3 rainbow. you might be wondering why he's showing us his hand. It's a complete whiff. Well, the action checks to me. You know that I like to blast off in spots like this, especially when we have a big overpair advantage. We're going to be basically the only one in the hand that could have 10s through aces in this spot. And we still have pocket 9s, pocket 5s, and etc., but other players can have that as well. It's a fairly disconnected board. There's a few straight draws, but we should generate a lot of folds with a bet, so that's what I do. I put out $40, and we only get one caller, and that's pretty good, narrowing down the field to heads up. It's under the gun, and we're going to go off to a turn card. The turn now is the 3 of clubs, pairing the bottom card. This is typically going to be pretty good for me because now my overpairs would counterfeit their 2 pairs, such as 9-5, which is going to be very unlikely anyway. But that being said, when he checks, we're sitting with queen high. We have no draws. We have no equity, but we have a dream. So I'm going to put out $110, trying to rep those pairs, trying to get him to fold a 5, maybe even a 9, but he decides to put in the call. Not feeling great about our situation here, but I think he's still pretty capped. I think he probably just has top pair and definitely doesn't want to see a big bet on the river. And let me tell you, we are going to give him a big bet until the river is the jack of spades. It's an interesting river because now we improve to a value hand. We have top pair. And when he checks it over to me, I don't think I'm going to bet super huge here. It's likely that he had top pair on the turn, and he probably doesn't like this river card being an over to his pair. So I put out a pretty small bet of $50, just trying to squeak some value out of his hand. Unfortunately, he lets his cards go pretty quickly. That kind of makes me think that he was on a draw like 6-4 or 7-6 or 8-7. I'm not really too sure. But he did let his cards go pretty quickly. Regardless, we're going to take this one down. And we win a few more small pots before moving on to another interesting hand. Now on the button straddle with ace-king offsuit. I put $5 on the button. I get ultimate last action. And my brother Gordy on the other end of the table, he's under the gun. He raises it up to $25. Now, the action folds to me. And you might be thinking this is for sure a 3-bet. But playing against somebody that knows me really well, they know that I would basically never, ever flat ace-king in this spot. When you're playing against somebody who you know, you definitely want to mix it up every once in a while. And we're going in position. If we spike top pair, he's never going to give us credit for a strong top pair, which is also going to be good for deception. So I stick in the flat call, getting sneaky here. And we're going to go off to a flop, which is pretty bad for us. It's 10-9-6 with 2 clubs. It's not bad for our range, but obviously our hand doesn't love it. We do hold the ace of clubs for a backdoor flush draw as well. But when Gordy checks it over to me like I would expect him to do on this board, I'm going to see a turn card with my hand. I check it back, and the turn card now is the jack of spades, improving us to a gutter to Broadway. Once again, Gordy goes for a check, and now sitting with a gutter and 2 overcards, I probably just want to take this to showdown and see river. Maybe we can improve. So I check it back, and the river is the queen of spades. We river the nuts, and like I mentioned pre-flop, he will never give me credit for ace-king. So if Gordy has a king, he basically thinks he has the nuts because he knows that I will basically never show up with ace-king here. Being a single raise pot is going to be very unlikely. He puts out a bet of $40. Now the action is on me, and I think that I should just raise massive, maybe even go all in, because if he has a king, he's never, ever going to fold. But in game, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe he would click me back with a king, try and squeak out more value. So I decided to just make a small raise to 120. This is honestly a massive mistake. I'm missing out on so much value. I could literally go all in. That's probably a little bit much, but I should probably be raising to $300 to $350 in the spot. If he has a straight, he is never going to let his cards go. That's why I should be raising so big. Anyway, I raised up to 120. He puts in the call, and we show him the nutters, and he shows us that he had a king. So pretty unfortunate to not squeak out more value out of this kid. Yeah, pretty big mistake there, and you can tell by his face that he was not expecting that. Moving on to the next hand, we are in the big blind, $1,200 in our stack, and we look down at 2 kings. We're going to try to pump some money in pre-flop here. The cutoff raises to $15, and there's a call from the button in the small blind. We are going into squeeze city here. I 3-bet it up to $70, and to my surprise, this is a wonderful spot because the cutoff 4 bets to $200. The action flows back around to me, and this is just ABC poker, people. We go all in for $465, and he calls and shows aces. That is pretty classic. So we're going to go off to a run out here. Queen Jack 3 on the flop. The turn card is a 10 of hearts. We improve to an open ender. Any ace or 9 will give us a straight, but the river, 7 of clubs, does not improve our hand. And we're going to lose a pretty big pot here. Kings versus aces. Not the way you wanted this one to go, but it happens. It's just a part of the game, so I don't really need to hear your bad beat stories in the comments. Moving on to the next hand, we have ace-9 offsuit in the small blind. There's a $5 button straddle, and the cutoff just puts in the 5. He limps. I'm going to be raising it up to $25. The cutoff puts in the call, And now the action is on the button straddle. This guy's been a little bit wild. He's been doing a little something here and there. I know he's kind of getting out of line, and he 3-bets up to $100. He's done this a couple times, and he's showing some big bluffs. And he says that he's tired of me raising all the time. I almost went all in here because I'm kind of just getting tired of this. Ace-9 offsuit probably could perform pretty well, even if he's going for value with like King-Queen. So I'm debating all three options here, shoving, folding, and calling. I really didn't believe this guy, so I decided on the passive option of just putting in the call. Obviously, the passive will be folding, but we want to get sticky, and we want to show this guy that we're not going to take any of his garbage here. So we're going off to a flop heads up. And the flop is ace high. It's ace deuce 3 with 2 diamonds. Pretty good for us. Obviously, we're still beat by all of his value, ace king, ace queen, and ace jack. I check, and he goes all in for $300. It's a pretty odd, but when I call pre-flop, I'm going to go with my read, a flop top pair. Can't be folding when I get an ace-high board. I stick in the call, and he pretty quickly shows us the big slick ace king. So this is a little embarrassing, I'm not going to lie. But we're going to go off to a run out. He says we can run it twice, and we lose both boards. Unfortunate, we went with our read and we were wrong, but that's just a part of the game. Like I said in one of my last vlogs about bluffing, if all your bluffs work, you don't bluff enough. It's the same about hero calls or going with your reads. If all your hero calls work, you don't hero call enough. You learn the best from your mistakes, and that's what makes you better. So we're going to add on for $200 and jump back into the battlefield. We look down at ace king off in the cutoff. There's a button straddle and 2 limps. I raise it up to $30. I think I should probably go bigger here, especially at a wild table like this. But regardless, my brother Gordy 3-bets me to $110 from the small blind. And he is in for a rude awakening here because the action gets back over to me. And I go all in. $440 in my stack. And Gordy pretty quickly puts in the call. So we're going to go off to 2 boards. We decided to do it a little bit friendly here. He shows pocket jacks. The first flop comes 8-7-5 rainbow. No help to us. But the turn's an ace of hearts. We lock up that board when the river comes to 4 clubs. Going off to a second run out here. The second board comes queen high. No help for us. The turn is the king of spades. We suck out again, but he's not dead. He has the jack of spades in his hand. So we're going to have to fade 2 jacks and a couple of spades here on the river. The river card is the 6 of hearts, and we fade it all. We scoop 2 boards, scoop in an over $850 pot against my brother. And we sucked out with the ace king on the turn. What a life we're living, man. Crazy hands here, and this one is going to get even crazier. We are in the small blind with ace-9 offsuit, and this is going to be a little bit of deja vu because there's a $5 button straddle from that guy. His name is Trey, and he's the guy that I played the last ace-9 hand against where he had ace-king. I raise it up to $25 when it folds to me, and the action gets to Trey on the button. He 3-bets me to $90, and like I mentioned, I don't have to explain this again. He thinks I'm full of it, and he's definitely being quite active with his 3-bets. I'm going to go with my read again this time. He can't have it 2 times in a row. So I go with the aggressive option this time and go all in for $350. And he folds his cards. We show him the ace-9 off, and he said that he had 10-8 off. So that's just a little taste of what's going down here. He's getting a little crazy. I'm getting a little crazy. And we're going to move on. In the next one, we are on the cutoff with ace-queen offsuit. There's a $5 button straddle and 2 limps to me. I raise it up to $30, and the hijack and button both put in the call. So we are going to go multi-way to a flop, looking to flop top pair, and we do. It's queen 10-8 rainbow. Obviously, this board is pretty connected. Jack 9 has a straight. There's 2 pairs like queen 10, 10-8, and queen 8. So there's definitely some likely hands that still beat us, but sitting with top, I feel pretty good. The hijack player checks, and the action is on me. In between 2 opponents, I think betting or checking is pretty good here. This time around, I decide to go for a passive line and start with a check, and now the button player bets out for $50. Seems pretty good, especially when the hijack puts in the fold, and the action gets to me. Sitting with top pair, top kicker, I could go for a check raise, but that might be overplaying my hand, and it probably could get a little bit difficult to play on some turns if he puts in the call. So I decide to keep my hand disguised and just put in the call. The turn card now is a 6 of clubs. Doesn't change anything about the hand unless he had 9-7. Could be possible, but I think it's unlikely. I start with a check, and now the button has a decision to make whether to bet or check, and he decides to keep putting money in the middle. He puts out a bet of $150. It's a decently sized bet, but again, we've under-repped our hand. He could still be value betting queen jack. king queen, and he still could have some bluffs like king jack or ace jack. So I'm going to stick in the call here. Not going to be folding on the turn quite yet, but we're going to go off to a river card, which is the 10 of diamonds. It's an interesting card here. I wouldn't expect him to have too much 10x that wants to bomb that turn, unless he had a hand that filled up on the river like 10-8, queen 10, maybe 10-6 somehow, I don't know. But I'm going to start with a check here and see what he decides to do, and he decides to wager all of his chips. $450. It's almost a pot-sized jam, and this is not a comfortable spot for me here. We're sitting with top pair, top kicker. I don't think he would ever jam a hand worse than ours, so we don't really beat any value. I don't think king queen is going to jam this river. That would be a bit of an overplay. That being said, the 10 on the river makes pocket 10s way less likely. It also makes two pairs like queen 10 and 10-8 that make a boat less likely as well. So we have to think about the hands that we lose to right now, and obviously it's those boats that I just mentioned, but it's also pocket 8s, and that's about it. But the line that he's taken has been extremely strong, and I'm just going to go with my read here, I think. I feel like I'm not good. It's not too often you see people go for a bet jam when they're bluffing, especially at the low stakes in cash games. So I decide to give him some credit with my top here, and maybe this is a nitty fold, but I put it into the muck, and he actually shows us what he had, and he shows us the 7 deuce. We got our shorts absolutely bluffed off, and props to that guy for sticking it in there with the worst hand in poker. Nice hand, man. We just got owned pretty hard, I'm not gonna lie. Hats off to you. That is not easy to do, man. Easier said than done for sure. So nice hand. We're gonna move on. We are in the big blind now with pocket 4s, and we're gonna look to flop a set here, ladies and gentlemen. My brother Gordy in the hijack, he raises it up to $20. The cutoff puts in the call. We're gonna go set mining as well. I put in the call, and we're going to a flop. We don't flop a set, but it's 6-6-7 rainbow. Not the scariest board in the world. We still could have the best hand sometimes. I start with a check though, and Gordy bets out for $30 now. The other player folds, and now the action is on me. I mentioned we still could have the best hand. Obviously, he could have a countless amount of hands, broadways, 10-9, 10-8, 9-8. So we still beat a lot of hands. Obviously, almost every turn in the deck is going to be pretty bad for us. But I stick in the call here. We're going to evaluate a turn card, which is the 10 of hearts. Once again, I start with a check, and now he bets out for $75. Now we have an interesting decision here because it seems like this board isn't really great for Gordy's range. Sure, he can have aces, kings, queens, jacks, 10s, but only one of those hands is a full house, and we probably have all the 6s in our range defending from the big blind. Not all of them, but a lot of the suited 6s. Like we could even have jack 6 suited, queen 6 suited, king 6, ace 6, 6, 7, 6, 8. You guys get the picture. We also could have some of the straights like 9, 8, and we could also have a hand like pocket 7s that would want to check raise this turn card. Our best bluffs in the spot are probably going to come from our under pairs, or maybe a hand like 8-5 or 8-4 suited that has a blocker to the nut straight. But sitting with pocket 4s, it seems like a really good hand to turn into a bluff here. So I go for it here. I bluff raise up to $210. My heart's beating. He's in the tank here. What does he want to do? Obviously, his overpairs aren't really loving the spot. They lose to straights. They lose to 6s. They lose to a few boats. They probably won't fold this turn, but they will probably fold the river if we blast off, obviously depending on what it brings. After a little while of thinking, Gordy really does like to go into the tank. He likes to be pretty slow with all of his decisions, but he ends up putting in the call. So we're going to have to see what goes down here on the river 9 of diamonds. I think it's a pretty good river to bluff here. A lot of our bluffs are going to have an 8 in it, like I mentioned, 8-5, 8-4, and 9-8 obviously already was a straight. 10-8, 7-8, hands like that would want to bluff the turn would now improve to a straight. And sitting with pocket 4s, we definitely are not going to win at showdown. It's likely that Gordy has a hand like pocket jacks, pocket queens, pocket kings, maybe a hand even like ace 10, king 10, or something like that. Hopefully not pocket 10s or pocket 9s or even pocket 7s. But we can't be scared of that. We have pocket 4s. We are not going to win if we check. And you know, I am going to put out a bet here. We're going to bluff 548 in the middle. We put out a decently sized bet of $315. He goes into the tank here, like I mentioned, but he does not look comfortable, and that is what I want to see. It's pretty obvious that he only has one pair, and I think that this bet is going to get the job done, and it does. He mucks his cards. I don't show him what I had, but I told him a little bit later, and he also told us that he had jack 10. So he just had an okay top pair. Definitely glad that we went for the bluff there. We got him to fold the best hand. Moving on to ace 10 offsuit once again in the big blind. There's a $5 button straddle and 1 limp. Our buddy Funky Poker is now at our table, and he's in the hijack. He raises it up to $25. The small blind and cutoff both put in the call, and this table has been crazy. It's probably been about an hour since the last hand in this vlog. The late position open and call, and then a small blind call. This is just a bunch of dead money in my eyes. So we are going to be 3-betting this one. We're going to be going a little crazy here. This table has been wild, so I'm pretty confident with this one. I make it $150 to go. Capron folds in the hijack and the cutoff folds as well. But surprisingly, the small blind puts in the call. And this guy, let me tell you, he has been wild. He's been V-pipping so many hands. He's been showing up with garbage in 3 and 4-bet pots. So I'm actually not too scared about this. I think we're going to have the best hand. But now the button puts in the call. He was on the straddle. He gets ultimate last action, and he likes his hand. So he's going to put in the 150, and we're going to go 3 ways to a flop. This is turning into quite the nightmare, I'm not going to lie, but the flop comes Jack, 7, Deuce, Rainbow. A complete whiff for us. The small blind checks, and I look over at their stacks. The small blind has 150, and the button only has $64 left. With over $500 in the middle, I think I'm just going to have to commit my stack here. I mean, the small blind could have like King Queen, King 10, Ace 9, Ace 8, 10 9 suited. There's so many hands that we still beat. And the button only $60 left. I'm happy to get it in with Ace High here. So that's what I do. I jam covering both players, and both players put in the call. Oh boy. The turn is a 9 and the river is a 4. The small blind shows us Ace Queen. He's going to win the side pot with a better Ace High, and the button shows us King 9. He just drilled the turn, King 9 of Hearts. Nice hand, man. Like I mentioned, this table is pretty wild. I wouldn't expect him to have Ace Queen off there, but hey, man, nice hand. And we are going to move on to our second to last hand of the night. We got 2 more for you, and they are pretty wild. We have pocket queens in the button straddle. Gordy races under the gun to $20, and the hijack puts in the call. The player in the cutoff, the guy who just had Ace Queen, who I've been telling you about, he's been V-pipping a lot here, and he 3-bets really small. In fact, it's a min click to $40. Gordy puts in the call, and the hijack puts in the call, and this is the beauty of the button straddle. We have last action, and we have pocket queens. Holy smokes, what a life we're living here. I'm going to come in for the cold 4-bet to $200. The action folds back around to the player in the cutoff, who goes all in for $380. Against this guy, I basically have the nuts. I put in the call, and the run out comes horrendous. Ace King 4 on the flop. Good lord. The turn is a 3. The river's a brick. And turns out it didn't matter what was on the flop because he had pocket aces. This guy's basically been waking up with the nuts against me. It's pretty sick when he's basically V-pipping 80% of hands, but hey man, what are you going to do? Unfortunate that we can't really find a good spot on this table, but we have the last hand of the night coming up here. Our stack has dwindled down to 650. I'm not sure how much we're up or down at this point, but I'll tell you at the end of the video. We look down at pocket jacks on the button straddle. 650 in our stack. The under the gun player races to $20, and there's 3 calls. And similar spot to last time, we're going to come in for the 3-bet here. I make it $125. The player under the gun goes all in for $184, and I put in the call. We're going to go off to our final run out of the vlog, and the flop comes 9 deuce deuce. Pretty safe for us here. The turn card is the 6 of diamonds, and the river card is the 5 of spades. Our opponent looks hesitant to show, so we let him know that we have pocket jacks, and he mucks his cards. He probably had ace king, ace queen, ace jack, something like that. But I can't complain. We are going to rack up and head to the cage. This was a long session. We started at about 2 p.m. this afternoon. That was the first to end. We left, we came back, and now it's about 2 a.m. So quite a long session. We ended up booking a small profit. We were in for $700 and out for $940. It's a profit of $240. It was quite a roller coaster session. Our stack was all the way up to over $1,500 at one point, but we just cashed out with $940. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you guys enjoy the content, and I will see you in the next one.